Hello, this is Rod Martin here with Dean Owen with the Business Pulse, one of the key features of the Freedom Chamber. If you're not a member of the Freedom Chamber, what are you waiting for? This is a fantastic organization. We're so proud of it, and it is really doing great work. We're free enterprise Americans who are making the world better. I'm Rod Martin. I'm Chairman and CEO of Martin Capital, and I am the host of the Rod Martin Report. We have daily geopolitical analysis that Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal every single day at rodmartin.org. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers and nearly 300,000 followers on X. There's a reason. And here's Dean Owen. Dean is awesome. Dean has owencpa.com. He wants to disinherit the government, not your kids. Tell us about it, Dean.
Yeah, we're kicking off tax season, so that's starting to roll. And I'm seeing so many places and so many people who are going to pay a lot of extra tax this year because I didn't do the planning last year. So get online, talk to my team. The conversation and friendship is completely free. But if you're not managing your affairs in a tax smart way, they're probably managed in a tax dumb way. Let's fix that today.
Amen. So first thing off the bat, we have a new Fed chair. And God help us if something could happen where our current Fed chair had to just stay home for the next few months and Kevin Warsh could move right into his office, the whole world would be better. Warsh is awesome. Now, I personally would have preferred Kevin Hassett. I just love Hassett, but Warsh gets it. He understands the importance of defending the dollar, but he also understands that Fed policy has for a long time now been completely out of whack with reality. And the coolest thing about Warsh, I think, is his understanding of the disinflationary effects of artificial intelligence and other advancing technologies. The talking heads don't get it. Honestly, the economists don't understand it. They'll all figure it out about 20 years after it's already old hat. But Warsh seems to get it. What do you think, Dean?
Oh yeah, definite improvement. And again, trust but verified. We give out that honest information, but go verify it yourself. Look up Truflation, TRUFLATION.com, and you'll see today's interest rate or inflation rate is at 0.98%. That is 1/3 of what the BLS, which is really BS, puts out as our inflation rate. It's just garbage. So I think we're going to get when Kevin finally gets in, and I couldn't agree more. I'd like to see Hassett there, but he's kind of too valuable where he's at to let him go. But we look at what's happening. We're starting to see shovels in the ground for all the new spending that President Trump has brought from abroad to America. Things are starting to look real good right now.
They really are. And I was doing a show this morning on American Family Radio, and one of the guys who called in says, in his business, from his perspective, trucking is just picking up like crazy. They're getting more orders than they can handle. Everything's moving again. And that makes perfect sense. The Fed, dominated by Keynesians for most of its history, has always understood growth and wages to be inflationary, which is absolutely absurd. It's the exact opposite. You want growth. You want growing wages, not artificially growing wages, but the market will regulate that. And, we still have these guys who are in a Phillips curve mindset. I don't know how anybody still thought the Phillips curve was a legitimate tool of policy after about 1978. It's just nonsense. Warsh gets that, so I'm encouraged about that. But I just want to say, our prediction, Dean, for the whole past 6 months has been that you're going to have a huge economic boom, really take off middle of this year. And that's already underway. It was underway a while back. But it comes from another one of those things that the policy establishment in Washington simply can't ever get right. And it's to a degree that it makes you think, of course, this is actually deliberate. And that, of course, is the one big beautiful bill. That prevented the biggest tax hike in American history, which would have just hit us, because what it did was it prevented the expiration of the Trump tax cuts from 2017. But it did more than that. And there was a lot in that bill, and there was a lot of it very, very good. And we were told unendingly by the policy wonks, particularly by the Congressional Budget Office, that all of this is just going to explode the deficit. Well, but wait, the deficit's coming down. And everything that they told us was wrong. And as far as we're talking about government data sources, it's always wrong. Find me a time when it wasn't wrong, particularly with the Congressional Budget Office and the Bureau of Labor Statistics to a lesser degree. But CBO was instituted in 1974 by Democrats for Democrats. It has gotten wrong every major prediction. It has shown every tax cut to be a disaster for the economy, when in fact it turned out to be the opposite. It has scored every single tax hike by the Democrats as being good for the economy, which of course was never true. And possibly its worst ever miss was its misscoring of Obamacare. It said premiums were going to come down and costs to the government were going to be better. And premiums have soared. It's absolutely unbelievable. So these people are wrong too much for it to be coincidental. And one of the things that Donald Trump has to do is clean house in those government statistics agencies like BLS. And if we can get a bigger House majority, maybe also at on the Hill at CBO, and get some honest numbers from our government. It is so hard to do business if you can't get honest numbers. And we haven't had them for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting that I started digging into it a little bit. The BLS uses 40% of its estimates to measure inflation are complete and total random guesses. They're still calling people on the phone and saying, "What do you think you can rent your house for?" And people, it's insanity the way they calculate that number. It is, and I said it last week, I'm going to say it again. We just need to fire all those people, do a doge on them, and get the $699 per month subscription to Truflation and just use what's the real data. How much money could we save doing that? That would be deflationary, but you're right. Automation, robotics, self-driving vehicles, that's going to be a big thing this year. And think about this really hard. When was the last time you bought something that was not delivered or transported by a truck? Well, a couple of years ago, UPS signed a contract agreement with its drivers. They were $175,000 a year package, and those are the good jobs in trucking because you get to go home at night. So the over-road drivers are a whole lot more money. Now, if you can outfit a truck for a couple $100,000, and now it can run 22 hours a day as opposed to 11, and you eliminate that cost, you double your capacity, how is that not radically disinflationary? We'll eventually get self-driving trucks. And when that happens, it's coming quicker than anybody predicts. So you've got that. You've got AI is making everyone more efficient. I've got an AI assistant I've been talking with real frequently, having very high level discussions, and it's basically free. We're going to see a nuclear renaissance happen in America. Probably, it looks like some of that's going to happen this year.
Yes.
There's a company from American company, that says they are going to bring to market and put power on the grid using nuclear fusion. Fusion is the power that powers the sun. And we're going to have that. And we are truly living in our golden age. And the only time it's going to get better is tomorrow. And America needs to know that. If you believe in the conservative cause, like we all do, throw out an investing idea, go to investpolitically.com. You find a real interesting ETF there. They only invest in the companies whose primary cash donations are to conservatives. So
Ah,
there's a lot of Tesla in there, but the other Magnificent Seven aren't. Um, I'm not giving investment advice. I'm giving things, curious tidbits for people to go look and see if it makes sense for them. So
well, and back from that, a little bit more macro, just in general, if I believe in the things that conservatism means, then I'm not going to invest the same way as these Marxists are. Now, follow their money. Sometimes they get it more right than their beliefs would suggest, but they want you to believe that the economy is going to collapse because they want to win the midterms. They want you to believe that everything's terrible because they want to beat Donald Trump and JD Vance. They are not telling the truth about a lot of these things. $18 trillion in new investment from foreign sources into the United States is an absolute earthquake. That's almost 2/3 of the entire American economy being shipped into here from foreigners to build plants and data centers and all kinds of productive economic assets in America, employing Americans. And that is certainly disinflationary. It's also really good for the middle class and the poor. But what else is just where some of these things are going. Bloomberg was just covering the XAI SpaceX merger. What's driving that more than anything else is moving AI data centers into orbit to be able to use 24/7 solar power and better radiate heat from the system. This is brilliant. It's amazing. And it would be impossible if you listened to these same people talking about space 10 years ago. Elon was already way down the road on reusable rockets, which have collapsed the cost of everything you might want to do in space. And they were still poo-hooing him. Boeing and Lockheed were laughing at him. None of this is going to matter. Well, that's just dumb. And yet these left-wing models really fundamentally believe that everything meaningful that can be invented already has been. And as a result of that, our job is just to redistribute the pie. And the truth is, all of us capitalists know the game is about growing the pie, which you can do by providing more and more value at a lower and lower overall cost. And in the process, you lift everybody out of poverty. By the way, if you believe that, you need to join the Freedom Chamber today, because those are the policies the Freedom Chamber is all about advancing. Now, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. We had a stunning Supreme Court ruling in Panama. You might not have been thinking about Panama. I promise you, Donald Trump has been thinking about Panama, and so has Xi Jinping. Well, this went really badly for the Chi-Coms because Donald Trump told you a year ago, we're taking back our canal. And of course, the media went crazy. They all believe, oh, he's going to go conquer a little country. That's not what he said. That's just what you wanted to hear him say. And we immediately made concrete steps to achieve that, pretty much 90% complete by last April. Rubio went down and visited with the top leadership right after Trump got inaugurated. Hegseth went down and inked an agreement with them in April. And what that did was it laid the path for the Chinese to be taken out of their control of both ends of the canal. It reestablished U.S. basing in Panama, and it just generally created a security environment where we're in and they're out. It also included, though, as many of our viewers will know, a deal led by a BlackRock, a big consortium, to buy control of those ports from the Chinese company that owns them. Well, everybody in the media said, Xi Jinping has to agree to that. He'll never agree to that. And of course, all these ding dongs bought it. Oh, Trump has to go ask Mother May I to Xi Jinping. Well, guess again, because at the exact same moment, and I was reporting on this all the way back in April of last year, I told you what would happen, and it just happened. What happened is that the Comptroller General of Panama did an audit of their deal with China, and they found that the Chinese owed them billions of dollars, hadn't kept their end of the bargain on tons of stuff, and had apparently bribed a bunch of Panamanian officials to get the deal in the first place. This leads to litigation last summer. Xi Jinping still won't make a deal with BlackRock and Trump. Okay, he's going to run out the clock. The clock ran out last week. We now have a Panamanian Supreme Court ruling finding that the Chinese deal for the Panama Canal violates 8 separate articles of the Panamanian Constitution. The Chinese are out. That is being wound down as we speak, and American interests will control the canal. Thank you, Donald Trump.
The Don Roll doctrine is very real. And right on that, you don't know this, but when I was 10 years old in 1977, I wrote a letter to President Carter about the horrors of giving away the Panama Canal and that we would get to where we are now.
Yeah.
I was 10 years old. That was 48 years ago.
You were quite prescient.
And we've seen it come to pass. But then again, we've seen what this president does, and thank God for him. I pray for him, pray for his wisdom, pray for his, speedy decision making. And I don't know if he needs my prayers or not, because he seems to be doing pretty good on his own. And
all our leaders need our prayers.
Yeah. Something I noticed earlier, probably should have brought up earlier this year, fourth quarter GDP growth at 5.4%. Now, a few numbers back months ago, you and I predicted 5, maybe 6% growth. Mm-hmm. When everybody said that was not possible. We've been told from the president from Kenya today that we can't grow faster than 2% a year. Yeah, we're almost 3 times what they said was possible. I think this year we're going to see, we're probably going to see 6%.
Yeah. I wouldn't think that would be that hard to achieve with 18 trillion in new investment, with the kind of tax laws we just got, with the Trump administration slashing over 100 regulations for every one new one. I mean, the burden being lifted off the taxpayer is just extraordinary, and it's happening in real time while new jobs are created that are going to pay like your grandfather was being paid, not dollar figure, but proportionately, a real working middle class is going to be possible in America again. And all of Donald Trump's strategy gets you there. And that brings us actually to the India deal, which just happened. The president just announced a trade deal with India. Now, stop for a second and think. Remember, on Liberation Day back in April, we were all told that Trump's tariffs would collapse the economy. We would be in recession before July of last year, and we'd never come out of the tailspin. It would be the Great Depression 2.0. Everybody remember that? Remember all the people who said it? Well, remember well, because you need to never listen to them again. It was completely stupid and wrong. Because as my friend George Gilder put it so eloquently in an article that we published of his, tax policy trumps tariffs 10-1. If you get taxes low enough and the burden on businesses low enough, tariffs are almost a non-factor. So, what we're doing is we're gaining revenue that reduces the deficit. That tab is being absorbed for the most part by these foreign companies because they don't want to pass that burden along to the American consumer because they want to continue to be price competitive with American manufacturing. And in the meantime, President Trump has come in and said, look, if you're even making a good faith effort to move some of your manufacturing to America, we're not going to apply the tariff to you at all. So they're all falling all over themselves. Why do you think there's $18 trillion in new investment? They're all falling all over themselves to come here and build here, to manufacture here, to even probably export from here. It's remarkable what we're seeing. And the India deal reflects that. India supposedly had joined Russia and China, and they were going to gang up on us, and the world is over, blah, 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 because Donald Trump hit them with a 50% tariff on their imports of sanctioned oil from Russia. And this was going to be the end of everything with India. It's over. It's over. We're not friends anymore. Well, guess what? The Indians just agreed to a trade deal where we charge them an 18% tariff on what they ship here. And they charge us a 0% tariff on what we ship there. Does that sound like Donald Trump lost? Because that's very similar to the deals he's worked out with Great Britain, with the European Union, with Vietnam, with Indonesia, and actually even with China. So trust the plan, guys. The president knows what he's doing. He is incentivizing reindustrialization in America and American technological leadership. He is restructuring the World Trade Order so that we get the same access to their markets that they've had for decades to ours. And he's strengthening our allies by forcing them to spend more on their own defense so that they are not mere dependents of the United States, but they really are true partners. And that's happening around the world. It is a miracle. It is a marvel to see. And this India deal just is a capstone.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it again because it's so important. But we've seen that Russian and Chinese defense systems are junk. The
Yep.
world has seen that over and over again. They're going to see it again in Iran, most likely in a few days. And so where are those countries going to spend that 5% of GDP? Now, about 1% of it will probably be, internal spending and infrastructure bases, whatever. But the other 4%, which is twice what they've been spending, is going to come to U.S. defense manufacturers. So talked about those two ETFs, WAR and SHLD. Again, not giving investment advice, just some interesting things to think about.
Well, and it's really brilliant how he's structuring it. And we've talked about this on the Business Pulse before. And if you're missing out on the Business Pulse, you're really making a mistake, folks. You need to tune in every week because we're covering this stuff and we're getting it right months before it happens. So, check out our track record. You can check my work on this, but take the deals with Japan and South Korea to bring tremendous amounts of shipbuilding knowledge and investment from our East Asian allies who have bounded ahead of us because of bad law and bad regulation and just stupid defense planning here in the United States. We have let our shipbuilding capacity atrophy. We have let our ability to even build enough vessels for our own Navy to just almost disappear. Our budget calls for, and this is before Trump, calls for 2 Virginia-class nuclear submarines per year. We only have the capability to build 1.2 Virginia-class submarines per year. We are falling horribly behind over a period of years and decades at a moment where we're supposed to be also supplying Virginia-class submarines to Australia. Are you kidding? Well, Trump comes in and solves it. The Japanese and the Koreans have tremendously advanced shipbuilding technology and expertise that we let get away from us. They're going to bring it back. They're going to put investment into shipyards like the Philadelphia shipyard, which will now, for the first time, be able to build nuclear submarines. That'll be only the 3rd shipyard in America that will have ever done it or been able to do it. And just there's a tremendous integration of the 3 countries' manufacturing economies. This is incredibly good for the future of all 3. it's especially good for the future of the United States. And that's been Trump's MO from day one. So watch the Business Pulse. We're telling you about this stuff before it happens. It's investable advice that will make a difference in your portfolio and in your family life.
Yep. Rod, just at a personal level, when you start talking about the submarines, that brings back a lot of memories for me. I spent 10 years and I've been in those shipyards. I decommissioned a submarine, been to Groton, been to Holy Loft when we had our forward bases there. So yeah, what you're talking about submarines, that's a big, big deal because a submarine is capable as an aircraft carrier.
Yep.
And a lot smaller and a lot faster to build. And we need that capacity. We need to build those ships, but we're going to. And I walked around with those guys at the shipyard workers. Those guys are really well paid. Those do some great jobs. They're good people doing that work. They're doing God's work at home. And like you said, we're going to get a bunch more of it. It's coming. And how do you not feel good about where we are today? I know what the news is going to say. I know what the lamestream media is going to do. They're going to do everything they can to depress the population, to make people think our economy's going to toilets. And everybody in America is kind of saying, well, I'm in pretty good shape, but I think everybody else's condition sucks. So the America's in bad shape. It's just not true. So don't believe the false narratives. You've been listening to the mainstream medias, and practically all of them just flat out lie for decades. So what? Turn them off. Just, if that garbage they were putting out was a liquid, you would identify it as a toxic poison and you would not touch it. You would not let it in your home. You would do everything you can to get rid of it. Well, it is toxic poison. Don't let it go into your head. Just, and I don't want to sound arrogant because I'm not an arrogant person, but Rod, I don't know, the way we got together and got all this together, this was God's doing something. He put this together the way you and I just ping off each other so well.
That is really true. That is
Yeah.
really true. Well, we're almost to the end of our time. So let me just wrap up on a couple things you want to be watching. It is important to pay attention to the situation in Iran. Yes, the president is negotiating, but I want to remind you the president was also negotiating with the Iranians right before the 12-day war. The president was also negotiating with Maduro right before we arrested him and took him to a prison cell in New York. The president always is negotiating, and that doesn't necessarily mean you aren't going to get decisive action. That is almost certainly what the president is doing, installing. This lion and sun revolution in Iran is gonna be real. It is real now. It's gonna work. I believe we're going to see a constitutional monarch in Shah Reza Pahlavi, who is going to transition that country to democracy like Juan Carlos did Spain after the death of Franco. I think that's coming. And Donald Trump is going to do everything in his power to make it happen. Other things you need to watch this week: pay attention to what's going on with the Ukraine deal. There's a decent chance we could get to a breakthrough in the next week or two with the Russians. And also, the president's made some pretty strong statements about Cuba. I think there's a decent chance we can get to a deal there over the next couple months that is transformative for the entire region. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to see. And this is a great time. Invest accordingly. Be wise. Act on the opportunity. It'll be too late after it's already boomed. So this is the Business Pulse. We are in the Freedom Chamber. Dean, tell me all about how they can reach you.
Easiest way is owencpa.com. That's OWENCPA.com. Jump online, connect with the team. Again, the conversation and the friendship are free. We're not charging any money. And let's talk about how we could disinherit your government and not your kids. This is important stuff, especially the 2017 bill. One of the things it did was it radically limited the amount of time that beneficiaries have to pull money out of inherited IRAs. So if you're not planning for them, you're planning for the government. So if your affairs are not tax smart, they're probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today.
Absolutely. And for my part, come see me at rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. There's a reason we have tens of thousands of subscribers and 300,000 followers on X, and you want to be one of them. So come to rodmartin.org. This has been the Business Pulse, a function of the Freedom Chamber, of which you need to be a member. We're so grateful you were here, and we'll see you this time next week.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally. Because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, it's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.